Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve. Today, there's a new version of the mod out, 0.87, and it mostly is related to Undead Burg and essentially de-specularizing and making it sort of easier on the eyes. As you might remember, yesterday's video I was a bit critical of where my mod is at as related to Undead Burg specifically. And I was like, man, yeah, that's why you do the side-by-sides with, unmodded DSR in this case. That I was like, oof, I actually do not like how noisy the image was in my mod. And most of that was due to, depth of field being slightly too strong. And the biggest reason was that the way that lighting is handled in this game is that they usually use two different lighting IDs and they separate them. So there's the lighting ID used for the map objects or map pieces. And that is handled through, let's say for Undead Burg, that would be lighting ID 10 for most of it at least. And then characters and objects are commonly handled through the collisions, which are the sort of invisible things that you're standing on, and they vary, and there's a lot of them, and they basically transition, and you can change lighting IDs for each collision. Like this area would be one collision, like 0000, and then the collision up here, once you reach here, would be 0001, and that's kind of how they would handle inside spaces, outside spaces. And then if they wanted the depth of field to be stronger or the camera to be closer, that's what they control through collisions. And so normally, the environment would have like a lighting ID of 10. The character, well, they would call it the collision lighting ID that you would step on would be like 15. And so they would handle the characters differently. And the reason for that is it's pretty straightforward. Basically, I put them together where characters were using a lighting ID of 10 and the environment as well, because I wanted them to be really grounded in the environment. The problem is that they have two different, essentially, like needs. The environment needs a certain level of specularity, but it needs less than what the characters need for the armor to be lit up effectively, and for the non-armored portions to be lit up. The diffuse, the inv diff setting needs to be higher than what the environment should be, because if the environment gets the same basically lighting ID parameters, it's going to be way too bright or way too contrasty, and so you have to separate them, which is how the unmodded game was. I just kind of went down this hole of trying to ground the people in the world, and while it works in some maps, like Firelink Shrine, they actually use the same lighting IDs for characters and for map pieces, and it actually works there pretty well. But it did not work in Undead Burg. So kind of your classic Dark Souls 1 modding shit where like it works some places, doesn't work others. It's not a one-to-one style thing. So anyway, now Undead Burg, because I've separated them again, the characters are properly lit. They're not too bright. The dark regions are still dark, but they're visible. The bright regions are bright, but not too bright. And you still have surface detail that's super visible, but it's not too visible, and the specular isn't shoving it in your eyeballs, right? And so that's sort of the balance that I want. It looks like Prepare to Die, but it has a nice visual clarity to it as well. And the other thing that comes with 0.87 is more texture replacements as far as using the Prepare to Die texture and not using the remastered one. Because most textures between the games are similar. I'd say there's a decent chunk that remastered did change, and not for the better. And then there's some that they mildly changed, which isn't either better or worse. It's just different. And then there are ones that they actively made worse. And so I'm basically going through and I'm going through each texture, which we're talking hundreds of textures per map, and I'm one by one checking to see, and most of the time, picking the Prepare to Die one and then upscaling that. Luckily, I had already done a lot of upscales for the Prepare to Die version of the game, because I have a mod that I haven't released yet. Oh, dang, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know it had like a run forward. Oh, that's cool. That's the R2. And so yeah, luckily I already had done a lot of the legwork. It's just basically going through and copying it. Oh, these boxes look great. Oh, that one was floating. Yeah, they don't have actual physics on the boxes themselves. Like if you were to take out the lower box, that is not actually present, which I think is funny. And yeah, so I've gone through most of the M10 textures, which covers the depths, Undead Burg, and Firelink Shrine. That's what's covered by M10, and I've gone through most of them. I'd say about 60% of them are in 0.87, where I've replaced the Prepare to Die, or with the Prepare to Die textures. And so what does that actually mean? Well, generally between the two versions, the Prepare to Die version has more contrast in each texture. Basically, Remastered washed out a lot of the textures. I'm not entirely sure if that's because they moved to a PBR metallic setup, so they wanted their diffuse textures to be, or needed them to be less bright, but I've been importing the Prepare to Die textures, and it works fine, at least to my eye. I think it looks great, and I think it looks far more contrasty, which is, of course, what the Prepare to Die edition is all about, was contrast and colors, where Remastered, I think, was inspired by Dark Souls 3. Which does make sense, since Dark Souls 3 came out 2 years prior to Remastered. So if they were going to base it on anything, you know, for revitalizing an older game, it does actually make a lot of sense that they would use Dark Souls 3. So I think that's why they went that way. I think that's why they changed the bonfires to look closer to Dark Souls 3, which I would say arguably, not even arguably, I just say it's just less interesting. You know, the DS1 original bonfires were sort of cosmic, and then the remastered ones are just literally, it's just a fire, you know. So that kind of sucks. I wish they hadn't done that. But in the description for my mod, there's a link where you can download the classic bonfire mod. So you can get back your Prepare to Die one if you want. And but yeah, I'm really happy with where my Undead Burg is. That's most of the changes you're going to get in 0.87. Beyond that, there's some bug fixes, and then it also touches Northern Undead Asylum to make sure that the lighting is separated between characters and objects and then the environment. So you should get some better balance of contrast there as well. And yeah, let's go out to this balcony and then I can end the video here. This is a much shorter video for me, but it's just a simple one to say, hey, new version's out, and it's cool. And I fixed most all of the issues I had with my version of Undead Burg in yesterday's video. And yeah, so I'm really happy with where it's at. And we are still using Prepare to Die textures, and it's going fantastically. I do plan on releasing the texture pack as its own thing, separate from Dark Souls Re-Remastered. Just because some people might want the textures but not the actual mod itself, which does make sense. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. More to come. I'll keep working on the mod, and we're marching towards 1.0. We're getting there. I'm still aiming for maybe March or April. We'll see. Maybe sooner, you know. But yeah, having a lot of fun. In the description, there'll be the link to the Patreon version of the download for 0.87, which will be the Google Drive link. If you want to support the mod, support the channel, that's honestly the best way to do it. But, you know, if not, no big deal. And watching is totally fine. And, yeah, like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.